that's on the call tonight that you'll be recorded. And welcome to District 3 Community Conversations. I am Tanya Williamson. I am the Outreach Volunteer Coordinator for the Land Bank, and I am really glad that you took the time to join us tonight on this sunny, the first crack of sun in a few weeks, so at 5:30 in the evening. That's a big deal. And I want to give you an idea of how the evening is going to go. So I'm going to share my screen with you. Find the right spot and make sure you're in the right spot for yourselves. District 3, we will have a brief presentation tonight, about 20 minutes or so, given by Lincoln Borman, our director. And then we'll have our preserve steward for Lopez, Amanda Widow. She will present highlights and updates for you all. And then we'll dive into the Q&A. Just to let you know, I'm having a hard time advancing my slide. Sorry, let's see. Well, I can wing it. So we will have the presentations, and then we'll go into Q&A. And the way the logistics will work tonight is the chat is disabled. It's a little distracting, so we're asking if everyone could please type your questions into at the bottom of your screen. You'll see the Q&A button or the Q&A block, and you will be able to, there we go, type your question in there. I will read them aloud, and the staff and commissioners will be able to answer them online with you. If you have a specific question, so perhaps you have someone in particular you want to address, if you could type that into the block, that would be very helpful for me, and I'll read that out. And I'll do my best to get through all the questions. We'll try to have a variety. If there's a few that sound like they're in the same topic, I may not ask yours specifically, but I will get the topic out there. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And let's see, just double check my notes that I got everybody. I think so. I think I can go ahead and introduce your commissioners if you haven't met them before. Miles Becker, he's up in the corner on my part if he would wave, and then Krista Campbell. And there's a second Krista Campbell down there. Don't worry, she's not going to run away. That's just her backup computer. And I think that's about it. And I'll give it to Lincoln to take it away.
Well, thank you, Tanya. We've also got Doug Strandberg on from San Juan.
Oh, surprise guest. Thank you.
Surprise guest. That's right. So I am going to share my screen. And we're just going to start with this, an acknowledgement that the San Juans are the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have stewarded and called this place home since time immemorial. And let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. The next thing I wanted to talk about was just the name, really, and the word conservation, which was originally in our title. It's gotten contracted so that we just call it the Land Bank at this point. But this was the original title of the organization, the Citizens Conservation Land Bank. It was in the ordinance and the code until the charter came along, and then it got converted, just contracted, I think, for convenience. But we're really looking to reintegrate that back into the name for a couple of reasons. One, the phrase land bank does not mean anything really. It's, unless you know exactly what it is, it doesn't really tell you. And we're obviously not a bank. We also have a lot of people coming here from other places. And for most people who may come from a place where there's a land bank, it's an entity that does tax foreclosure, basically recycling properties for affordable housing. And we don't do that. What we do is conservation. So look to hear that a bit more from us. Why do we have a land bank? Well, I think the situation's pretty clear. We're seeing a lot of really disturbing things happening in our world. Mostly due to climate change, with fires and floods, storms, droughts, political unrest. And we're seeing some of those things here as well, with environmental degradation and increased risk of fire, drought stress, concerns about drinking water, irrigation water. And yet we also have a lot of people coming here one way or the other, and that's evidenced by the frenzied real estate market, which is slowing down now only because of lack of inventory. But there's an awful lot of construction happening as well. I think pretty much a record level. And the more people we have, the more conflict we have. But also, there's a great increase in demand for natural areas and places to recreate. The National Park on San Juan noted that their visitation doubled over the course of 2020, which was a bit of a surprise, but we're seeing more and more people out there really needing those green spaces. And the more natural area we have, it slows the demand for increased services. We do quite a lot of asking the community what they're interested in, what they want to see. And this is from a survey that was done in 2019 by the Terrestrial Managers Group, which we actually coordinate. And so it's pre-pandemic, and the focus of this was really about tourism and how to deal with increased levels of tourism, what people's preferences were. And so this is what you see, the strong support for paths, bike lanes, all different kinds of paths, but also for acquiring more public land of varied types. So this is something that's really pretty important to the community at large. Just so you understand the context, when you look at the percent of public land in Western Washington counties, we really are in last place. Especially on the mainland, you can see those high numbers. That's mostly federal land. We don't have very much federal land out here, but I just put this up to show, there's a lot of room, and probably a lot of demand that we may not be meeting in terms of having public land for people to recreate on, or just for protection. So a little bit about the land bank. It started in 1990. There was state enabling legislation that allowed collection of a 1% real estate excise tax to conserve areas. That required counties to have a vote. We're the only county with a land bank, the only one where this is passed, and it's passed 3 times now, each time for a 12-year period. That 1% real estate excise tax is our principal source of revenue. Our mandate, as established in 1990, is quite broad. There are a lot of words in there. You can really break it down to a few basic things. Ecosystem integrity, managing for nature, natural areas, systems, processes, things like that. Rural character and landscapes, that's just to conserve the feel of the place as you might see it driving down a county road or being on the ferry going from place to place, just that great open space feeling. Community health is another key one, providing places for people to go and recreate. There's also a lot of evidence that just having nature around you is a strong contributor to health of communities. And last, agricultural sustainability. We've done quite a lot of work in preserving farmland around the county. How do we go about our business? We do a lot of planning. I mentioned that tourism visitor management survey of residents. The original plan was the county's open space plans. You can see that in the middle. That was done back in 1990. It really went through area by area in the county and rated places for their open space value. It's been a long time since that one was done. It's still in place for our open space tax program. We've also done these parks, trails, and natural areas plans every 6 years. We're required to do these to make us eligible for grants. We do community surveys in conjunction with those. There's our habitat conservation plan. We've done a variety of other plans as well. The result of this is what you see on the right-hand side, the matrix that we use when we're looking at potential projects. So these are the kinds of questions, the criteria we're looking at when we're thinking about whether to proceed or how important a particular project might be. So there are a variety of things in there, from the size of the property, whether it's adjacent to protected lands, can we find additional funding to make the project work, environmental values, scenic connectivity, not just ecological connectivity, but also recreational. What kind of threat is it under from development? Is there agricultural value in the property? So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. When you're doing open space conservation, it kind of breaks down to two different things. One, the scale on the left-hand side of this, this graph or flow chart. You can see the two basic breakdowns there. Large landscape scale, where we're really looking at ecological value in concert with recreational value. So a property like Turtleback or Lopez Hill would be a good example of this. It's just larger landscapes where those ecological processes can thrive. Also, we're looking at specific features, which a place like Turtleback meets both of those criteria. But we're also doing things like conserving neighborhood open space. And the example there is Driggs Park and Friday Harbor, or preserving shoreline access. East Sound Waterfront Park in Orcas is an example of that. When the type of conservation we do, the type of options open to us, the typical ones are conservation easement, where we're basically conserving private land. We're limiting what development can happen on private properties. So that's things like working farms and forests, and we're preserving views and rural character and things like that. The Double R Bar Ranch, the Ritchie Ranch, is an example of that. I'll come back to that a little bit later in this presentation. The second type is outright ownership, and this is important, particularly when we want to provide public access, because it's difficult to do that on conservation easement lands, or when we need to do more hands-on stewardship of ecological resources, restoration of Garry Oak habitat, things like that. We also lease agricultural land to farmers with a goal of trying to take the cost of land out of the equation and making it possible for farmers to thrive out here, which is a pretty difficult road to hoe. Sorry, that was a pun. Decision making, we have a volunteer commission which is appointed by the county council, and they're setting policies. We've got monthly regular meetings where they look at projects, approve them, ultimately recommend them in a budget to the council. The council is approving those budgets and accepting deeds prior to closing. Staff are doing the evaluation of these projects, negotiating transactions. We seek partners and grants, prepare budgets, transaction documents, and keep the community involved and informed as we're doing here tonight. We try and be as efficient as possible. We are limited to keeping our administrative costs to 10% of our revenue. Over the life of the program, that's averaged just over 6%, so pretty lean. We do a lot to secure additional funding for projects with over 40 million since 2005. And this is not just projects that where the land bank ends up owning a piece of property. It's also for partners. We've worked with state parks and the national park and other entities as well. It doesn't include property donations or funding we've gotten for stewardship. We also make a lot of use of volunteers. Amanda's going to talk about that a lot more, but obviously this is really important for us to get people out on our properties. It helps them better understand what we do, and it allows us to get more done. Obviously, this has been a tough year for that, but we're hoping that things will normalize a little bit as we get later on into the summer and fall. So what have we accomplished? We have 49 conservation easements on 7 islands. These are things like working farms and forest lands. We have 38 preserves, 29 of which are open to the public, or over 76%. The 2 of the newest ones that have come online, both last fall, Zylstra Lake on San Juan and Channel on Lopez. And we are working to open a couple of more as we're going forward. In case you're wondering about the impact on your taxes, it's important to keep this really in proper context. So the total taxable value of real estate in the county, it's actually over 8 billion at this point, whereas the total taxable value of land bank preserves is 35 million, or less than 0.5%. Even though we own a fair amount of property, one of the reasons the taxable value is low is that over 70% of the properties we buy are in these lower tax classifications, like designated forest land, some of which they were in government ownership and we've protected them, but no taxes were being paid in those properties when we purchased them. We do this exercise regularly, looking at, well, if we took the taxable value of our properties and put them back on the tax roll, what would the theoretical savings be for people? And it comes out to about $15 for a $500,000 property. So we think it's worth it, and we hope you do too. These are our Lopez preserves and conservation easements. The preserves are outlined in green and the conservation easements in yellow. The preserves that we have open, we have 8 preserves open. You can see we have 2 more. We'll talk about those a little bit, but almost everything on Lopez is actually open to the public. So projects, what have we been doing? This is the one that I mentioned earlier, the Double R Bar Ranch Conservation Easement. This is down off south of the village off of Fisherman Bay Road. It's a 130-acre property. We purchased this conservation easement to reduce the density. This is the Ritchie Farm. And the hope is having this conservation easement will allow them to keep it in agriculture for a long time to come. Farther south, on the Davis Bay Farm property on Richardson Road, we purchased this 24-acre piece. This is a project in conjunction with the San Juan Preservation Trust. You can see that larger Richardson Marsh project area, most of which will be protected by conservation easement held by the trust. We own this property outright. You can see it's really that piece by the road there is the only high ground, but we're hoping that as we go forward and we're doing some restoration activities in the marsh, this might be a great stopping point, maybe a great birding spot in the wintertime. Spencer Spit Addition, or Amanda's calling this Spencer Spit North. We don't really have a good name for it yet. We got into this one thinking that this was a great property for the park to own. We ended up owning it. It was partial donation, partial bargain sale. But our plan is basically to work with the state park to have them manage it. It will have some trails, but not much else on that property. It is quite a spot, highly visible from the ferry. That's a shot from the ferry below. As you go by Flower Island in Lopez Sound. So it's really a pretty phenomenal place with a lot of nice high bluff shoreline. The Lopez Hill Preserve Edition, I see you didn't correct this, it's actually 75 acres. North of Lopez Hill, this is one where the Lopez Community Land Trust actually was able to purchase this larger property. And we worked with them and with the Preservation Trust so that we ended up with 75 acres. The Lopez Community Land Trust retained about 40 plus, and they're going to lease that property out for farmsteads. This is just a little bit closer look at it, and a photo. Some really pretty special places down there, north of the hill when you get off that rock escarpment. A lot of beautiful cedars down there. And this is what the preserve looks like now. So Lopez Hill is now 475 acres. When we're thinking about priorities, this is kind of our list, and this is what leads to that whole matrix that we do. So we've got the lots of studies that we're relying on, a lot of different kinds of criteria. This is what we've done recently. So I just showed you a bunch of these, but you can see the Spencer Spit one, the Double R Bar Ranch, Lopez Hill, Davis Bay Farm and Richardson Marsh. So those have been accomplished. When we're thinking about priority areas, taking all those variables into account, we do have some areas which really do emerge as being quite important. So areas down by Watmow Bay, by Iceberg Point, some of these shoreline areas on the southwest part of the island or off the southwest part of the island, Center Valley. There are others as well, but there are still a number of places which are well worth saving when we're looking at this landscape context. But that is not all we're looking at. In fact, we've got a few projects, not projects, potential projects, and this is part of the reason for the meeting tonight, just to show you things that come up on our radar and we consider. And it's important for the community to weigh in and give us some clear idea about what's important to them. So these are projects that are near Lopez Village. We've got a couple which are next to Weeks Wetland and the village. One property, the one to the north, it's really kind of that view shed looking down from the village toward Fisherman Bay. And then the property over to the left. A larger property has some issues with hazardous waste questions. There's a lot of moving parts on that one, but I just wanted to show you these to give you an indication of some potential things that are out there. And lastly, Top of the World, a project which we've heard a lot about over time. It's been under contract, it's now not under contract. It's an expensive property, but it's a really pretty interesting view potential for public access if we can make that happen. It is connected. You can see there's the Preservation Trust Webster Preserve, and then there's the Dragon Run community area also that's outlined in white. So there are some connectivity potential here for trails, but these are kind of outside of our normal areas of things that we're looking at. But just wanted to throw them out there for your consideration. And with that, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Amanda.
Sorry, unmuting. Take some time. Let me see what I have here. Sharing my screen. Hold on a second. Does that work? Do you see my presentation? Okay. All right. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm Amanda Wedo, and I'm the Lopez Preserve Steward. I've worked for the Land Bank since 2018 and formerly volunteered on the commission. I want to acknowledge my coworkers. While I'm the primary person based on Lopez, there's a great team throughout the county and supporting us here. A few other staff you might see are Aaron Helcom, our stewardship coordinator, and Charlie Benke, who monitor conservation easements and coordinate various parts of the program. We have several field assistants, Jacob Wagner and Shauna Barrows based on San Juan, and Kayla Seaforth on Orcas, and they travel over here to help with projects as needed. Eliza is our land steward who prepares ecological assessments and manages the Salish Seeds Nursery. Margot is the seasonal nursery assistant, and Peter and Doug are preserve stewards on Orcas and San Juan. We also have office staff, Lincoln, Tanya, and Aaron Rock. So overall, there's a lot of support and assistance with our stewardship projects here. So this map shows our accomplishments on Lopez. Lincoln just showed you the similar map, but our most recent acquisitions are marked with a star. We have two parts of our stewardship program, monitoring our conservation easements and managing preserves. The key differences are that our conservation easements protect resources on privately owned property, and the preserves we own outright. So our easements are monitored annually in collaboration with landowners to ensure that the conservation resources are being protected. For our preserves, we develop a stewardship and management plan that guides our actions and activities. We have 8 preserves open for public access, and the newest ones are not yet open, but we're looking at that. And while public access often generates a lot of interest, there are several other aspects to our stewardship program. So our mandate is quite broad, and so the stewardship program has fairly wide-ranging responsibilities. Our focus is on maintaining the ecological resources of our preserves. So our conservation activities can take the form of monitoring either species or the sites, habitat enhancement, integrating climate change adaptation into our assessments and management plans, and working with partners and grant writing, and also a healthy dose of field work. So while purchase of property protects it from the impact of development, there's often a considerable amount of work to be done maintaining, restoring, and enhancing our natural areas. Some of the work we're doing on Lopez includes planting native shrubs and forbs at the Fisherman Bay Spit and Hummel Lake preserves. We are creating habitat for the endangered island marble butterfly at the Spit Preserve, which is the top middle photo. And we're sampling at multiple beach sites for foraged fish spawning, like in the top right photo, in a partnership project with Friends of the San Juans. For our habitat restoration activities, particularly of the Gary Oak habitat on Orcas and San Juan, we discovered that the native plants we needed were very difficult to source, and so that led to the creation of the Salish Seeds Nursery project. The nursery is now running cooperation with the San Juan Preservation Trust at the Red Mill Farm Preserve on San Juan Island. And we produce locally sourced native plants and seeds for our projects and for partners. And there's also opportunities for the public to purchase plants at plant sales or by advance order. So this is a catch-all category for all the other things we have to do to maintain preserves, which could include fencing, mowing, beach cleanups, and maintaining other infrastructure. We also expend considerable effort every year controlling noxious weeds, which also supports our habitat restoration projects. Low impact low impact recreation is also another part of our mandate. It's the way many of our residents interact with the land bank and our preserves. We have over 5 miles of trails on Lopez. Most are for pedestrian access, and Lopez Hill allows mountain biking and horseback riding. And there's also various infrastructure like roads and parking and signage to maintain and develop and maintain. Countywide, the land bank has protected over 1,800 acres of agricultural land through conservation easements or purchase as preserves. Protecting farmland has been a priority on Lopez. And many of our conservation easements are over agricultural areas, which has contributed to preserving our open space and ag resources. The latest being the Double R Bar Ranch conservation easement purchased in 2020. The land bank has an ag coordinator, Charlie Banky, who monitors the conservation easements and assists with maintenance and lease opportunities, which are mostly on several San Juan and Orcas preserves. On Lopez, we have a hayfield at Weeks Wetland that's on a short-term use agreement, and the Richardson Marsh Preserve has had seasonal grazing. Now I have a few slides focused on specific preserves. This is the Channel Preserve that we opened in the fall of 2020. There's a short 1/4 mile trail to the beach, to about 500 feet of beach, with views over San Juan Channel. It's a great place for wildlife viewing. And important to note that when you visit, please leave your pets at home to minimize disturbance to marine wildlife. The preserve also connects to state-owned public tidelands, which are below mean high tide. We have a great group of volunteer stewards who help monitor the property and also help with trail maintenance. These are new acquisitions that Lincoln showed you. They're not open to the public, and we're in the assessment phase while we learn about the site features and characteristics in order to write a stewardship and management plan. That phase can take some time, typically over a year, and there will be opportunities for public input. So the Richardson Marsh is about 25 acres. We have that rocky bluff upland and a portion of the marsh. There's an old roadbed through the upland that we envisioned would be maintained as a trail. It is an excellent area for winter waterfowl, so there are possibilities for a bird blind or a viewpoint. And there's the agricultural use with summer grazing currently. What I'm calling Spencer Spit North is the 2 parcels. They adjoin the state park, and we envision working with state parks to manage those parcels, and we'll be assessing the possibility of a loop trail that connects to the Spencer Spit network. I'm also calling this one Lopez Hill North. The 75 acres on the north side of Lopez Hill. It fits right in like a Tetris block. There's mature cedars and mixed second growth and mossy rock outcrops. It has significant wetland and drainage from the hill. So we're also assessing that site and working with the Lopez Community Land Trust on a trail connection through their parcel to the north. And this piece will be included in the Lopez Hill Management Plan, which we'll review in 2022. So I'm not able to talk about every preserve, but as you can see, there's a lot to do. I really appreciate and love working with volunteers and groups like the Youth Conservation Corps. The last year has been pretty complicated, but we're starting to return to the field with volunteers. And there's various ways to participate, and there'll be more opportunities moving forward. So we hope you'll join us. And for example, there's this upcoming volunteer opportunity, which is the Great Islands Cleanup next Saturday, the 24th. Lopez traditionally has an excellent turnout. You can sign up for a beach or a road, and you can even get started on another day. I am specifically looking for volunteers for Fisherman Bay Preserves at the Fisherman Bay Spit, Weeks Wetland, and the Tombolo Marsh. We've had quite an accumulation of marine debris ranging from small plastics to large boards and plywood. And so we want to get it all out of there. The main event sign up is at Plastic Free Salish Sea, or you can contact me or Tanya and we'll help get you the info. That wraps up my presentation. So here's my contact info and reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thanks, Amanda. So let's see, we've got, I've been reviewing the questions as they were coming in, just try to get a feel for it. And top of the world is definitely top of the question list. I can help myself. So I will try to be concise. I know we talked about it, Lincoln and Amanda talked about it in their presentation. So it might be slightly repetitive, but there is definitely interest. And I've heard from Kurt and Shauna, and please excuse me if I don't pronounce your names correctly, but they thank us for the important work that you're doing. And Top of the World would make an amazing resource. Large landscape, conservation and preservation, and connection of current cross-island trails. And a couple notes in these questions do ask about, would there be a requirement for additional fundraising by the public to match funds? Is there a way for people to make those in a tax deductible way, or do donations through the land bank for a tax deduction, but designated? Oh, sorry, that's a slightly different question. So I'll come back to that. But it does sound like community support. Is there a way to help fundraise? And I guess I'll leave it at that, and maybe the commissioners would like to respond to that, and I'll come back through and revise the other questions that have been asked.
I'll jump in. So, because Lincoln can answer a lot of questions, but from my perspective, I don't think there's any disagreement that piece of property or pieces of property up there aren't fantastic. It is a beautiful place, beautiful location, beautiful view, and we've heard about it for a while. We heard about it about a year or two ago. There was talk about it, so it's been kind of on our radar. For me personally, as a commissioner, I find one of the challenges being really securing access to something like that. There are many ways, or at least three that I can think of, ways to access that property. And it's important to us before we set up a real obligation to something that we know that we have access, public access to it. And it's not impossible, but it's complicated having that many people on that with the one road, Dragon Run, I believe, and then coming in from the backside over at David Bill's or Kai's property, and then maybe over from the preserve, I think. So there's a lot of parties to that. So lessons learned have taught us that formally securing access is really important. Consensus is one thing, but having a legal document that provides access would be pretty important for me as a commissioner, because it's a big financial obligation and the expectation is to have access. So I'd like to know that going in.
Yeah, I'll add to that as well. So I think it's a great property. It will make an excellent preserve, or at least for continued public access. It would be nice to have that as opposed to being developed by a private landowner. I think access is an issue right now. There's some cooperation or support from people that live along Dragon Run, which is great. And but if those homeowners aren't there anymore and they're replaced by other people who maybe feel differently, then what do we do then? So I think access is one issue, and then the price tag is another issue. And people have been commenting on what the land bank's role or a commitment to that would be. If it was a preserve and an outright purchase, the process for that would, just for so people are aware, the process for that would be that there would be a discussion amongst the commissioners, all 7 commissioners, about whether it would make sense to allocate those funds to that purchase. And so there would have to be support from everyone, basically a consensus that yes, that those funds are worth it. And it is a very, it's a lot for the total price tag. And I don't know that there is a specific amount that the land bank could say, okay, well, if we just had hit this amount and was matched by funds, then we could go for it. I don't think we have that. There's definitely a way that we could contribute, I'm sure, and that we could play a part. And I think partnering with other organizations, especially there's a Friends of the Top of the World who are organizing and doing a good job of organizing around it, and they might be able to do part of the fundraising, and we would definitely want to be a part of that conversation, again, because it's a pretty valuable piece, but there's just some other things to work out. So I'll keep thinking about ways that we could get involved, and maybe some other agencies that would also be involved. I'd be very curious to hear what people's thoughts are for how to use that. Like, what would you physically want to do with that space? Would you want to have a soccer field up there? Would you want to have it be a pavilion? Would it be restoration and forested? So I'm kind of curious to what the end goal of people are looking for.
Yeah, this is a really tough one. And I think the price tag is the main reason to wrestle with it. That it's important to remember that we're having to look at projects across the entire archipelago. And so there's a lot of competition among potential projects. And of course, our funds really are quite limited. People like to talk about how much money we're making off of the REIT because of the real estate sales, but we can spend that money in a heartbeat, pretty much, just on projects we've got out there that are potential ones ready to go, and all of which have their own folks advocating for them. So it's a balancing act, but no doubt this one's got a lot lot going for it. Definitely something we should keep talking about. As far as the other questions of fundraising, yeah, I think that would be a critical component here, without a doubt. And we can take funds and use those for the purchase. We did this with Channel Preserve, or accepted donations, and ended up using those in part to purchase the property. So that, yeah, that's possible, and it would be tax deductible too.
Thank you. Take that off. All right, so bear with me. Sorry, I'm trying to get through the questions to make sure that the ones that talk about Top of the World had a few other pieces. There's a question from Lauren. I would love it if the land bank purchased the Bar Green property in Lopez Village. What is the land bank doing to secure this important view corridor?
So the Bar Green property is the one that's adjacent to Weeks Wetland, and it is that view corridor out of the village. We've been working with the clean water folks in the county who have been interested in trying to purchase an easement across there for clean water purposes, stormwater purposes. And so they've been talking with the owner. They've done a variety of studies looking at the wetlands and issues with the property. And so they've been kind of going back and forth with the owners about what the potential is. But I think there's a strong potential for us to work together with them, partner with them, and acquire that property. We just don't know. We don't know how much money they're asking at this point. And so there are a lot of variables there, but it's definitely something that we're working on.
Thank you. There was a question about the price tag. How much is the top of the world property?
So my understanding is that their asking price for the entire property is 1.75 or something like that. There's a potential to buy a little bit less of it, leaving 3 of the lots out, but that's kind of problematic in achieving your objectives as you're trying to connect through to other properties and take advantage of the view. It's hard to say, but that's the asking price. I guess it's close to 1.8.
Okay.
There's also sorry, Tanya, there's also a comment from Tracy that if people are interested in finding out more or helping with that effort to, I guess, put top of the word on to a preserve, that they should contact Megan Crandall, who was kind of leading that effort. And I don't know if you're able to send out her email, or I could, you are? Okay.
I can. I'll make a note. As long as Megan gives me the thumbs up, and I can
Okay.
contact you, Megan, beforehand to share your email. And a question from Kurt: is it possible to hike from Hummel Lake to top of the world through the? Sorry, I got it closer. Champion property. Not sure if I'm saying that right.
That's the property that's immediately to the east of Top of the World. It doesn't directly connect to Hummel Lake, but it gets you started. And obviously, that's definitely one of the things we think a lot about, is trying to make these broader connections with certainly the Lopez Community Trails Network has some very ambitious goals, and we're here to do what we can to assist in that. So it's something to think about.
Great. And let's see. There was a question if you could explain or elaborate on the scientific part of the mandate. I guess a little bit more than what we touched on earlier.
Well, the scientific part of the mandate, there's just a variety of things. Obviously, if there are areas that are important for research purposes, we're interested. It's not necessarily that we're going to acquire a property to do research on it. But if there are interesting questions, and we're really looking at the resource value, and that's a big piece of why we go forward with acquisitions. We've worked with many researchers doing a whole variety of projects on our preserves, and so we're very, very open to that. I don't know if that's a really good answer to that question, but there it is.
Well, I think some of our most of our management plans address things. I would call them scientific. If you're talking about shoreline erosion and just sensitive areas and how to protect or preserve or reestablish them, how to mitigate impacts of different conditions. So I think, I don't know if it's literally scientific, but it's everything that's impacting those properties through climate and water. We consider all of those things every time we develop a management plan. So
yeah, we do a lot of assessments, of ecological assessments of our properties.
And let's see, how about a different one from Tracy. Isn't Blackie Brady Preserve a land bank property on Lopez? I didn't see it on the Lopez map for public access.
it's a county map. I mean, it's a county property, I believe, county park.
It's part of the county park system.
Yeah.
I learned something. I didn't know that.
It's a very cute little beach.
I'll have to visit that next time. Kurt asks, is it difficult to establish public trails on a conservation easement property?
It all depends on the easement and the owners you're working with. Sometimes it's possible, a lot of times it's not. It's a challenge, honestly. Particularly when you're dealing with agricultural properties and farmers are concerned about, what the impact is going to be if you've got the public and they've got all these operations going and their liability questions, animal safety questions. So it's a tough one. It can happen, but it's not always easy. And in many cases, you want to do the project regardless of being able to get public access, even though you would like to have it. Conserving that open space may be a higher priority.
It came up at the Orcas meeting. So I think it's, and Lincoln mentioned it earlier, but our Trails Committee really has done a lot to help build the relationships. Getting trails between property owners is really tricky. And with their, tip to toe or top to bottom walks every year and connecting with landowners that are on those trails, that's just done a lot of good ambassador goodwill work for us. And it takes building that trust, I think, over and over again for people to understand what that means to have a trail going through their property. So our thanks to the Trails group for that, for sure.
And we do accept trail easements on private property, whether there's a conservation easement on the property or not. We're very willing to talk about that.
Okay, here's switching gears a little. The question is, does the land bank try to match its expenditures per island with its real estate excise tax revenue per island? And how do grants figure into purchases?
Mm-hmm.
That is a great question.
That's a good question.
The charge of that commission is to strive to spend the money where it is raised. How you do that is another question, but we keep looking at what we call district analyses to see how much money has come in through the real estate excise tax within those districts and how much money we've spent. And it does get quite complicated when you're trying to factor in those grants and how much property you're able to acquire without actually spending the money. I welcome you to come to a land bank commission meeting or tune in. I'm sure we'll be having a district conversation before too long.
I think I have to say, in the years I've been on the commission, this topic has come up a number of times, but always in a very congenial and collaborative way with the commissioners from all the islands. I've never, I've lived here a long time, and sometimes Lopez feels like it gets kind of the third cousin removed, whatever. But I've always found this commission to really look at the properties under their own right and the value that they have, and grants do become important, because if it looks like an island might be getting more than what would be strictly allocated, if we can offset that expense with grants, then a lot of that disappears. So I think I have really appreciated this commission being so fair with all the islands.
And I agree with Krista, because in the 10 years that I've been on the commission, that's exactly how we've approached things. We're aware that, I think San Juan Island is close to maybe 50%, or has been at different times, of the REIT, but I don't feel that that's ever come into a decision that we have made. And I think that that's just the way it's going to continue.
So there's been there's a lot of similar follow-up questions. So I think I'm just going to kind of lump them all together. And the theme is, and it's about top of the world, is the community is wondering, I think is looking for what can they do, or is there any direction that the commission could give the community in showing their support and pushing top of the world forward or to the top? I mean, aside, I guess, from the price tag, but are there any suggestions on how they could go forth to make their support known?
Well, first of all, just having people on record, getting letters or emails, the commissioners want to hear from you all about particular projects. So that's number one. In this case, because the price tag is so high and because there's so many other competing projects out there, and also that the likelihood of us being able to get a grant funding for this project seems pretty low. Really, community financial support is going to be critical for making this one work. So whatever can be done for people to organize and collect pledges. I'm sure folks have been talking to the Preservation Trust, which is really, top notch at doing these kinds of things. I'm not sure what their level of interest is in the property, but certainly that's a conversation that should be had. But I mean, those kinds of things, I think, are what will bring this one to some kind of successful conclusion.
Lincoln, so I don't have experience with this since I've been a commissioner, but for the community fundraising part of it, how does that work as far as do we wait until Friends of Top of the World comes and says that they have raised $700,000 and they're just looking to fill in the additional amount, or do we give them a number? Or what's the general in the past? What's happened with this kind of half, well, or not really half, but sort of partnership in funding?
Well, I think that really is a commission decision what they're looking for, and obviously we don't know at this point what the number might be that the community would have to reach for it to make it work. I think that the commission needs to talk about that more. But I think if folks want to organize and collect pledges, that's great. We can hold money if that's necessary. I think it's important to remember too that this is kind of on the fringe of how we tend to operate. This is much more in nonprofit territory. So this is what the Preservation Trust does all day long, raising money for particular projects, and they're just very good at it, putting together a campaign to make it happen. We don't really have that apparatus. We don't have a development director who's going out to the community asking for donations or anything like that. So we can participate as we are able, but still you're kind of making it up as you go along, honestly.
I think too, if people want to invest their energy into this, aside from the fundraising and money side, going back to Krista's point about the access, some things that could be done ahead of the game are actually getting a legal document that does give permission or some sort of consensus. I don't know that by itself would do the trick, but if the commission had that would be a huge lubricator for going forward with thinking about this as a preserve. So I think I don't know if that means contacting a lawyer or getting the the Drag and Run community to sign something or put it in writing, but I think that would be another good way to spend their time.
All right, thank you. There's a question about Top of the World being a good candidate for the Salish Seeds Project to create a native meadow. And Kitty, I will get back to you. One, that would be something that we could talk to Eliza Habiger, who is the nursery manager for the Salish Seeds Project. And I'm not sure how familiar she is with the property itself, but I just wanted you to know that I saw the question, and I will make a note to email you, and I should have your email through registration. And if you don't hear from me, maybe just forward your email again. But Eliza works part-time, so it may not be till early next week that I get back to you, but just, I saw your question, so thank you. And let's see, there's a question about, Lauren asks, do you count preservation trust lands as public? If not, how much preserved land is there in the county if you add in their lands?
Yeah, their preservation trust is a private 501c3, so they're not part of the public land picture. They do have close to 3,000 acres of preserve, so that would bump us up to about 18% if you took that, if you added that in. Just noting that with the other counties, that's, you know, they have organizations like that too, and those figures weren't included for those other counties either. But that's what the impact would be to add preservation trust preserves in.
Thank you. Let's see. Is there a Friends of the San Juan County Land Bank to give local visibility to the good work the land bank has, is, and will be doing? Other roles, volunteer turnout, pledge collecting.
Tanya, you can answer that question.
I don't think, we don't have anything official, no. The light bulb just popped up there. No, we don't have a Friends of the Land Bank, but we definitely appreciate volunteers and all the members of the public that do let us know and appreciate the work that's being done. So you can always email me or call me, and I'll share that with the commission for sure.
Yeah, on the website for the land bank, there was a nature notes section for a while that had just a description of what was happening on the preserves. And I personally would love to hear what people's experiences are when they go out. If you're out on a preserve or walking a trail and you see something cool, send it. And I think if we had a space on the website to post people's notes, that would be really great. Or if you have photos you want to post, I think that would be really nice to see on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, I would love people to send me photos and tell me what you're doing out there. We also have a Facebook page and an Instagram account, because everyone has that. Can't get away from social networking.
But I think if someone's interested, Tanya actually chairs a communication committee that she needs to, we should acknowledge, because she's been trying to herd a lot of cats to work on some concrete communication plans, and kind of a group like the Friends of the Land Bank has been discussed. So I'm not sure who asked that question, but if you have interest in participating in that type of a group, let us know that, because I think that may be part of the next steps. You know, we're looking at ways to get our message out, because we only have so many staff and so many ways to do that. But if we have people that are interested in the community that want to help do that, I think we'd be very interested.
Thank you. Carol asks, is there anything happening on Shaw?
Well, so there is a lot happening on Shaw. We don't have any properties on Shaw. We have done some things in the past with DNR land that we kind of passed through into private ownership with a conservation easement. But Shaw has quite a lot going on because the trust has been very active, and they've received a lot of property donations. I think they have about 350 or more acres of preserve on Shaw. And then you've got quite a lot of property that's conserved via the University of Washington. So there are a lot of conserved areas. A lot of them have public access. The trust has been working on that as well. And there are privately conserved properties with conservation easements. So we look at Shaw. It's a matter of finding the right fit.
Thank you. Let's see. Somebody did respond to your question, Miles, what they would like to do with Top of the World, which is at a minimum preservation and conservation and a connection of trails. And it would be great to have some form of direct public access beyond the other trails, but understands how that becomes more complicated. So no, at least no soccer field from that person, but an idea for you.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I think the Friends at the Top of the World have put together a sort of a site plan with trail options on there, and something like that would be also a great a little product to share with people when you're talking about what it is that you want to do. So yeah, thanks.
So it looks like the last question would be, could the land bank partner with the Conservancy and others to share costs? But I think you talked about looking for grants and partner organizations. So I just wanted Nora to know that she'd been heard.
We love partnering. Spend a lot of my day trying to find partners to do stuff. So yeah, with the Preservation Trust or other organizations, we've worked with Trust for Public Land and the Conservation Fund also. But yeah, we'd be happy to do that.
And let's see. Well, I posed to. I think we've answered all the top of the world questions, and there aren't any more. Are there any other properties that attendees are interested in that that haven't come up or haven't been talked about tonight? Somebody, that's a funny one. Shauna forgot to add the motocross track for the top of the world. I'm gonna guess that's a joke.
Good, Shauna. That's hilarious.
I will say, obviously the top of the world does have some similarities to something like Mount Grant in that there is a road that goes up to that viewpoint. So it does provide an opportunity to get people with limited mobility up there. And that could be something that's really important. But yeah, no motocross. It's not happening.
Well, we still have about 22 minutes, if I'm doing math correctly, left in the time that we allotted. I don't know if there's anything anyone else wants to add or have a question. Oh, we have a new one. What can be done to ensure permanent access to Iceberg?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure, as you know, the access there is not legally secured. It's via it goes across private property. There is a utility easement or something along those lines that the Coast Guard holds, but that's not about public access. We have talked with that landowner periodically about that. So it's definitely something that's on our radar to get a trail easement going through there. And it's certainly something that's been on BLM's radar as well.
Well, I guess if there's no more questions, I will invite everyone that's here. There's also the monthly commission meeting on Friday at starts at 8:30, and the link that's also via Zoom. We're still doing that virtually, and that's on the agenda, which is also on the website. So you can find that there. And you already plugged Great Islands Cleanup. I'll probably come over for that, Amanda, since I haven't been there yet for one of the Great Island cleanups. Although I guess I'm going to miss out on the usual parade.
Yeah.
Oh well, next year.
Next year, yeah.
Lauren, thank you. She enjoyed this format, and we do plan on doing, I think, some meetings like this again, and probably hybridize as we hopefully get back to in-person meetings soon. And a question from Tracy /comment. Will the land bank continue these community conversations twice per year or more on Zoom? She likes it. She recommends it.
Yeah.
So thanks for the feedback. You all will also receive a follow-up email, and I'll probably put a short survey together just because it's the first time we've done it. So I would appreciate you wouldn't mind sending your feedback in about your experience as well.
Yeah, thanks to everybody for signing up and signing in today.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I'm appreciative. I didn't think anybody would show up tonight when the sun
so
stuck
nice.
out there.
It's like the nicest day of the year so far. But yeah, people still tuned in. Really appreciate that.
And I do see, I don't have a name, that it would be nice to see how, or excuse me, to see who in the community attends the meetings. And thank you for sharing that. I think this first time around, we did it one way that the Zoom recommended, and I would agree. So we'll try it next time. Try to have more of a community feel where people can see one another. It's great. Well, it feels weird to sign off early, but I'm not. Let everybody get out there and enjoy the sunshine and barbecues, I guess.
I say great.
Thanks everybody for participating, and thanks Tanya for doing such a good job hosting.
Thanks. Making sure I'm not missing anybody over here real quick, but I think I got everybody. So
All right. Good job, everyone.
thanks. Oh, and
Right.
Tim Clark, this meeting will be available to watch later. It will be posted on the county site. Okay.
All right.
Oh, and just a reminder to give support for the dock on the Fisherman Bay Spit property. I got a last minute one there too. Okay. I think I got everybody. All right. Thanks, everyone. I'm gonna end the recording and then end the meeting.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you.
Thanks all. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you.